go on.
Go ahead.
In accordance with NJSA 10:4-6 et sec, the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting was provided by the Board Secretary to the Daily Record and published on December 13, 2018, by stating the time, place, and date of all regularly scheduled meetings, and by filing a copy with the municipal clerk. A copy of this shall be included with the minutes of this meeting. Nora, please call the roll.
Mr. Berkowitz?
Here.
Mr. Jaskowitz?
Here.
Mr. Kaplan?
Here.
Mr. Prasad?
Here.
Mr. Reddy?
Present.
Mr. Shaw?
Present.
Chairman Irakim.
Present.
Also with us, we have Mr. Herniak and Mr. Holloway.
Here.
We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance first.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point in this evening's meeting, is there any member of the public that has any business to be brought to this board that is not on this evening's agenda? I hear none and see none. As a matter of information, is there any member of the public here that's not with the applicant? Well, that answers that question. Do we have anything else to do besides the
This is it.
application, or is there any,
This is it.
we don't, we do? No. Okay, so let's call application 1864, Parsippany Hanover Realty 2 LLC.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Stephen Tombalakian from Wiener Law Group on behalf of the applicant, Parsippany Hanover Realty Roman numeral 2 LLC. We're here tonight for the second part of a restaurant miniature campus adjacent to the business campus.
Mr. Tombalakian, could you just spell your last name,
Sure.
please?
Tombalakian. Let me give you my card.
Stephen, traditional spelling, I assume?
Absolutely.
You are the first. I can no longer say I don't know any Tombalakians.
There you go. And you said it right the first time. So,
He
okay.
practices.
If the board is familiar, on the easternmost side of the business campus, there's a undeveloped parcel of Dryden Way. It's now proposed to be developed for as 2 restaurants. The applicant was recently before the Hanover Planning Board, which approved the Hanover part of the campus, for lack of a better word, to have 1 restaurant. And now we're before this board to seek approvals, preliminary, final major site plan approval together with use variances, soil movement permit, to allow the second restaurant, which is proposed to be a Capital Grill. So again, Hanover approved its piece. Now the Parsippany piece is before this board. Tonight we have a pretty simple application. It's not a complex application, but there's a lot of moving parts. We have a number of people here that can testify, but we're really proposing to have 2 witnesses. Patricia Ruskin, our site engineer who designed the site, in both sides, the entire site, as well as Michael Toby, our planner. We also have other people here who can answer operations questions, traffic questions. If the board has any questions on those issues, we have people here that can answer. But primarily, those would be my 2 witnesses.
Okay.
So without further ado, I'd like to call my first witness, Patricia Ruskin, our engineer from PS&S.
Ms. Ruskin, if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Ruskan?
Ruskan, correct.
I have you in the application as Patty. Do you prefer that or Patricia?
I prefer Patty. Thank you.
Mr. Tombalakian, would you voir dire your witness as to her qualifications, please?
You know, Patty, years ago, you did appear before this board and were qualified as an expert, but since it's been a while, can you give the board an update as to your education, your credentials, your qualifications, and confirm that your license remains active and in good standing?
Sure. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from Rutgers University. I have been a professional engineer for 25 years, And I've appeared before numerous boards throughout the state, both planning and zoning, on different applications. The last time I was in front of the zoning board was on, I don't remember what year it was, but it was for the Staybridge Suites Hotel. I have appeared before the planning board in Parsippany many times. And my license is still valid.
Just about to ask.
Thank you.
Any objections to Ms. Ruskin?
Which suites?
Staybridge Suites, it's on Upper Pond Road. No, Interpace Parkway, excuse me.
Yes.
Yes, Interpace
Yes.
Parkway.
No objections, we'll
No.
qualify Ms. Ruskin as an expert. Go ahead, Mr. Tumlock.
Okay. Now, Patty, as I noted, you are the lead designer. You're responsible for designing and laying out the site. I know you have a number of exhibits on the board, so since this is your project, I'm gonna pass the mic over to you and let you explain to this board what we're proposing on both the Hanover and the Parsippany sides of the site.
Sure. To help you out, we have a couple, we have some, I think you call them placemats, but 11 by 17s of the exhibits. Might be easier to see. So first exhibit that we have up, we'll call it A1. This is an aerial image of the campus as a whole. To the top of the page is north, just about north. And so if you look on the actual exhibit itself, you see the business campus. Route 287 is on the eastern side.
I have a
Route 10 to the south.
Ms. Ruskin, these are all the same?
Yes.
Okay.
Dryden Way to the west and Sylvan Way on the north and the east side. The project itself, you see in red with the municipal boundary pretty much right through the middle of the project site. The area in red is about 20 acres. The area in Parsippany, which is block 202, lot 604, is 11.6 acres in size. Again, it has frontage on Dryden Way and frontage on the Route 10 Dryden Way ramp. Undeveloped land or wetlands to the north and to the east. And the site is in the SED 10 zone, or the Special Economic Development District in Parsippany. The site itself has an existing paved driveway off of Dryden Way. The driveway itself was paved back when Parsippany Business Campus was developed. It's about 670 feet long. The driveway is a right-in, right-out, and there is an existing landscape median in the middle of Dryden Way. This road also serves the Parsippany Well House, which is this little lot here, right on the boundary, a municipal boundary. That is lot 15. That's an existing well that the water department actually uses and is in their overall water system. The site is surrounded and constrained by wetlands and flood hazard area. We do have a valid LOI for the site, which delineated the wetlands around that part of the campus. The site itself generally drains from the south to the northeast and to the east into the wetland area. There is a berm along the property line with evergreen trees and some other street trees currently today. Within this campus and with this big area surrounded by the streets, a very big portion of this area is within conservation easements that were put in place when the business campus was developed. As part of the project, we are not proposing to do any disturbance within.
Highlight that part again.
Sure. So the conservation easements actually are a little bit on the site. They flank either side of the driveway. And this goes pretty much all around the undeveloped portion of the campus. It's all within a conservation easement.
So none of that can be developed.
Correct. And nothing is proposed to be touched as part of this development. As you heard, we were approved by Hanover Planning Board at the end of February. And while this application is for the parcel in Parsippany, we'll talk a little bit about the Hanover piece as well, because they are sister restaurants and they will act as an overall restaurant or area. So if we can put up the next board, and the next sheet on your set is, correct. This is the colored landscape plan. This is the landscape plan that is in your package, your site plan package.
A2.
This will be A2.
Each of the sheets in this clip will have a separate exhibit designation.
Yes, thank you. So what we have highlighted is the Parsippany portion, but you can see that is not colored is what is proposed in Hanover and what has been approved. So in front of you is what is the Capitol Grill. This is a one-story restaurant. It's 9,909 square feet in size. For comparison purposes, the sister restaurant, Seasons 52, is 8,630 square feet. That's in Hanover. We are requesting a use variance to allow this freestanding restaurant in the SED 10 zone. And we're also requesting a variance for the size of this restaurant. Your ordinance requires a minimum gross floor area of 15,000 square feet. This restaurant is 9,909 square feet. Within the restaurant itself is all indoor seating. 277 seats are proposed. The building itself is set back 115 feet from the property line. That does require a variance. Your ordinance requires 150 feet. As you come into the site, again, this is the existing driveway that I showed you before. This existing driveway will remain, and connected to the existing driveway is the circulation around the entire development pod or the parking area. This driveway itself is the access to the site and the only access to the site. So as part of the proposal, we're proposing a new curb cut through the median, the landscape median, and a dedicated left turn lane to serve this part of, to serve this campus. Again, circulation around the campus is two-way circulation, parking in front of and adjacent to both of the restaurants. Deliveries to the restaurant will be to the, what we call the southeast corner, or it's actually really the northeast corner, excuse me, the northeast corner of the restaurant. So the deliveries would come and circulate through the campus. They could either go through the parking area, they could come up on the northern side and come to this service area at the rear. The deliveries will be infrequent trucks, very small, like a very small straight truck. These two loading areas are 24 feet wide by 38 feet long. It's a little bit longer because there's a bit of an angle to this concrete loading area. And to the extent that, because this area does stick out a little bit into the drive aisle, the parking lot, if we need a variance for that, we are requesting that. In your ordinance, you only talk about the width of the loading spaces, not the length of the loading spaces. If needed, a truck may do a lay-by in this area, unload, go with pan trucks, and go into the rear of this service area. The refuse area is also located in the same service area, facing the wetlands and the rear of the parking lot. We're proposing an 8-foot-high screen wall. It will match the facade of the building to screen that dumpster area. The dumpster area itself is 10 feet deep and 35 feet wide, completely enclosed and screened by this fence. And your ordinance does talk about 6-foot-high wall as a maximum. To the extent that this screen is considered a wall, we are requesting a variance for that refuse area. The main entrance into the restaurant is on the southwest side of the building. A total of 157 parking spaces are proposed on the Parsippany side of the campus. But if you look at it as a whole, there's 316 parking spaces to serve both of the restaurants. Again, the municipal boundary, you see the line right through the middle of the development. Because of the location of this municipal boundary, we are requesting a side yard setback for the building itself. It's 8.4 .44 feet away from the municipal boundary, whereas there's a 75-foot side yard setback that is required per your ordinance. Similarly, if you look at the parking goes right up to and basically through the municipal boundary. We are requesting a 0-foot parking setback for this side property line in order to allow the continuous parking within the development and circulation within the parking field itself. There's one large pylon sign proposed in Hanover. It's 20 feet high, 150 square feet. It includes a sign for both the Seasons 52 restaurant and the Capitol Grill restaurant, and a directional sign. A use variance is requested to allow for advertising off-site. So we have an advertising of the Capitol Grill on the sign itself. We also have a proposed monument sign at the driveway. That monument sign is proposed to be 9 feet wide and 11 foot 10 inches high. There are several variances requested for this freestanding monument sign. The maximum height of the freestanding sign, your ordinance permits 10 feet. The sign itself is proposed to be 11 feet 10 inches. The area of the freestanding sign or the monument sign is 64 square feet is permitted per your ordinance. We are requesting 67.5 feet for this sign. The last variance for this sign is the minimum setback. 20 feet is required from the property line. We're requesting a 15-foot setback for that sign at the driveway entrance. Within the parking lot area, we're proposing parking area lighting to illuminate and provide safe passage for the people parking in this area. It will be a LED fixture, 30 feet high. Fixtures are internally shielded down and sharp cutoff fixtures, they direct the light downward.
Excuse me, is there any valet parking or is it all self-parking?
On the
Yeah.
Parsippany side? Yeah, there is an opportunity for about 20 valet stalls on the campus if the need arises. There is a spill of light over that municipal boundary because of the proximity of this boundary itself. So we have several lights in the Hanover side that spill over onto the Parsippany side and vice versa, just to provide uniformity of the lighting on the site. The lights themselves are proposed to be maintained for 1 hour after business closes to allow for the employees' cleanup, preparation for the next day, and safety in returning to their cars before they leave for the evening. There will also be some security lighting proposed to remain on within the parking field overnight. When you look at this plan here, you also see a lot of green. This is the wetland area, the forested area which surrounds the restaurant campus. There's also a number of trees, very heavily wooded on either side of the driveway. So when you drive into the campus, you're surrounded by trees. We're also proposing to add landscaping within the parking area itself, and a very nice landscaping plan surrounding the proposed restaurant. There's shade and ornamental trees proposed, shrubs, both deciduous and evergreen, as well as ground cover and grasses proposed as part of the project.
For the record, Mr. Willens is here.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yes.
Before we flip to the next exhibit, Ms. Ruskin, about A2 and preemptively with regard to what I suspect we're going to mark as A3, both of these exhibits have elements to them which are from your development overall, but not before this board and not in this municipality. Question, A2 and what I believe will be A3, the parts that are not before this board, do they accurately reflect the post-approval version of the development?
Yes.
and your testimony about the parking spaces, so on and so forth, about the portion of the project not before this board is accurate as well, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
The next exhibit is A3. This is the overall utility plan. What it is the utility plan that's in your set of site plans, merged together on a single sheet. And we did this because there's the main part of the site, and then there's the western area. You can actually see the windows of the pages that were part of the site plan application to show the full driveway, and also to show the improvements that are proposed within Hanover Township. We'll talk about that a little bit. So we have the municipal boundary. So as part of the overall campus, we did look at the campus as a whole, and then look at it in Parsippany and in Hanover. The goals for grading and drainage of the site was to minimize the amount of earthwork required to the extent practicable, cuts and fills, providing positive drainage throughout the site, and meeting the New Jersey DEP as well as the township's stormwater management regulations. The site as a whole has been graded to be a near balance of cut and fills. We will have a little bit more cut on the Parsippany side, but it will be taken from Parsippany and moved right over the municipal boundary to fill in the areas that are needed to make the grades work in Hanover. We did request a soil moving permit application, and that was submitted with the total earthwork to be moved as a total cuts plus fills around 40,000 cubic yards. But the goal was to maintain the cuts and fills and balance the site, and that is what we have shown here as part of the overall project. Balancing the earthwork, however, comes at a little bit of a cost to balance the earthwork, mainly because of the constraints that I told you about. We have wetlands and we have the flood hazard area. So we're very, very tight around the back side or the north side of the campus. We do have a double-tiered retaining wall, double tier 6 foot high, separated by 6 foot, within the back along the wetland and flood hazard area limits. That allows us to backfill that area and use some of the existing soil that's being cut out of the area to the left to create the detention basin number 2, as well as detention basin number 1 in Parsippany. On top of that retaining wall is a 3.5 foot high fence for fall protection. The project itself is considered a major development per the stormwater management rules. What that means is that we need to meet those rules. We need to address water quantity, water quality, groundwater recharge, and low impact development, as well as soil erosion and sediment control. To address that, we have 2 detention basins, which I briefly mentioned. Detention basin number 2 on the southwestern corner of the development. That's within Parsippany. And detention basin number 1 on the southeast side of the overall development in Hanover. Detention basin number 1 will take the runoff from all of Hanover Township, as well as about half of Parsippany will drain to the east, and that was solely because of the availability of space that we had for the campus. The detention basin number 2 on the southwest side will take the remainder of the development area. Also, as part of the development stormwater control is water quality treatment. So a storm filter is proposed to meet the water quality treatment. That storm filter itself, because this is a smaller basin, it's relatively small, 9 cartridges will be utilized to address the water quality. The geotechnical investigation for this campus actually shows that the soils are not permeable. With that, the existing site is not does not provide groundwater recharge today, so as part of the stormwater design, this new project does not need to meet those groundwater recharge requirements. A stormwater management maintenance manual has been prepared, it's been submitted, and provided for the development as a whole, the owner of the property, excuse me, will be responsible to follow those maintenance procedures and within the maintenance manual itself. You heard me talk about the wetlands and the flood hazard area. We did apply to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection for a flood hazard area and freshwater wetland permit, and we did receive that early last week. So that itself has addressed all of the encroachments that are proposed as part of the project within the regulated wetlands and the flood hazard area. The utilities to serve the Parsippany portion of the development include, for sanitary sewer, there's a grease trap for the restaurant. That grease trap is located at the rear of, of the building. Sewage itself will be conveyed to the existing sanitary sewer in Dryden Way. It will run down the existing driveway and connect to that sewer system. We're in the process of preparing a treatment works application for this restaurant because the total proposed sanitary flow is greater than the threshold of 8,000 square feet. It's just a little bit above. It's 9,600, almost 9,700 gallons per day. Water for the development, actually for both Parsippany and Hanover, will be served by the Parsippany Troy Hills Water Utility. We have met with them, and the original design was to propose what we call a lollipop system. Proposed water connection to the water main in Dryden, running up the driveway, looping around the development. We did see that there were some comments both from the fire marshal as well as from Mr. Holloway about providing a secondary connection, a redundant connection. So we have met with the water department. We've submitted an application to them, water application. The proposal is to maintain that lollipop system and then connect to the existing 10-inch water line that comes from the well house out through an easement and then follows along Route 10 and serves the Hyatt House in Hanover. So we've proposed to make that connection to provide a secondary or a redundant water connection for the development as a whole. As part of the project, however, there's an existing 12-inch water line that comes from the well house. It's a little bit circuitous. It runs a little bit through the campus here and then runs along Dryden and then eventually crosses over Dryden. We did test pits. We did locating, trying to locate this water line. Not an easy task, but we did find it and found that, of course, it's right through the detention basin number 2. So, and because of our proposed filling on the north side, it will be too deep. The water department has requested that we relocate that. So we have shown on the plan that we've resubmitted to the water department, that water line will be relocated. It will stay in the easement up to the well house. It'll be relocated to the front of the proposed retaining wall system, come onto the campus, go around the detention basin, and connect back to its existing location along Dryden. We have gas service that will serve both the Capitol Grill as well as Seasons 52. A gas main, again, coming down the existing driveway, coming through, serving Capitol Grill, and continuing on to serve the Seasons 52. Electric service by JCP&L through an existing manhole on the Hanover side of the campus, the primary enclosure at the back of the parking lot will be able to serve both Capitol Grill as well as Seasons 52. All the utilities proposed for the development will be installed underground. Just, I think, because you may be interested in understanding the hours of operation of the Capitol Grill. Monday through Thursday, the hours are 11:30 till 10 p.m. Friday, 11:30 till 11 p.m. Saturday, 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. and Sunday, 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. Deliveries will be mostly prior to 10:30 in the morning. Refuse pickup twice a week. The grease trap that I mentioned on the north side of the building, about once every 3 months, depends on the actual usage. And recycling will be similar to the refuse pickup twice a week. The pickup for the garbage and for the recycling will be off hours as well. One thing I do want to show you, because I think you'll be very interested, are the next exhibits. Now these exhibits are perspective renderings of the Capitol Grill itself. This is A4, A5, and A6. A4, hold on, I gotta get close. A4 is actually the north side of the building, or the really like kind of the northwest side. There's a drop-off area right in front here. This is a drop-off. The entry is right behind this ornamental tree. You can see that there's low proposed landscaping, some accent trees surrounding that side of the building. The next one is A5. This is the south side of the building that you see here on the right, and you can see that the actual area of the parking is just surround the building. See the landscaping all around as well. And the last exhibit is A6. This is the main entrance. You can see that the area, and so you see the signs, which Mr. Toby will talk about the signage on the building itself, as well as some small plaques on either side of the entrance. You can see that there's some accent light, but that really does come from the inside of the building.
The orientation of this is southwest?
This is the southwest, yes.
Unless the board has any questions for Ms. Ruskin, or if Mr. Holloway wants to go through his report and deal with the engineering issues now, I'm ready for my next witness.
Are these restaurants gonna have liquor licenses?
Yes,
I guess they have two, right? One in each town?
correct.
Any questions over on the left?
Mr. Chairman, the applicant and myself, we had numerous phone calls and conference calls, and we had the review letter dated January 16th, 2019. We went over that every single point, and the applicant will stipulate that they can make the changes in the report.
Absolutely.
So that satisfies the requirement for the engineer. There's no specific question that's left unanswered.
Any questions over here? No?
I know.
Yeah, Mr. Berkowitz?
Just for the record, what's the distance between the two restaurants?
Oh, that's a great question.
What was the date of the engineer's report again? You said
It
January.
was January 16th.
Thank you.
You don't have anything mechanical to do that? You gotta go get a ruler?
Trustee.
Trust your trust.
iPhones can't measure this distance yet.
The closest is 220 feet. That is from the corner that juts out on the eastern side of the Capitol Grill to the northwestern middle part of the Seasons 52. And entrance to entrance is 350 feet.
Okay. And then the resolution from Hanover, is that part of our record?
It's not, it was memorialized last night, so I don't think we have a signed copy yet, but it was approved last night.
Oh, we can get a copy?
We'll provide a copy.
Thank you.
How was the last issue in the report about outdoor seating being resolved, number 7?
There is no outdoor seating
For the Capitol.
for the Capitol Grill, correct.
But there is outdoor seating supposed for season 52.
Yes.
Seasonal outdoor seating.
Correct.
You referenced the delivery zone there. Is that for the traffic person, or can you answer questions about that?
I can answer questions.
I'm trying to figure out if a truck pulls into there, how it cuts right through where the cars drive. How is a car going to get around that?
Well, there are two things. The deliveries will be off hours, so there really won't be any patrons here.
Okay.
The, this area here, this is for very small, like FedEx type or small box
So there won't be any
trucks.
tractor trailer kind of
I mean, there
deliveries?
might be like a 27-foot straight truck, and it could also, because it will be off hours, it could pull in and just lay by in the drive aisle. Right. There, we can, the employees, if they came, they would park in this area too.
No patrons there.
No, there would be no patrons in the back.
Okay. Will that be marked employee only?
Yes.
Question.
Any other questions?
Yes. Would you have an independent observer in terms of the SWIP, the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, to make sure silt fence is adequately placed and maintained?
Correct. The, that will be part of the construction. We did apply for the soil erosion sediment control permit. We're working through that with Morris County Soil Conservation District right now.
Okay.
Is Capitol Grill a franchise or is it company owned?
It's company owned.
And I assume each restaurant has a different owner?
No, it's the same
Oh, it's the same owner.
ownership, yes.
Just for the record, the restaurateur is Darden Corporation. They own a variety of restaurants.
Oh, it's Darden?
It's Darden.
Okay.
They're going to own both Capitol Grill and Season.
Gotcha.
Any other questions by the board? I think we have some members of the public. Any members of the public have any questions of this witness on the testimony given? I hear none and see none.
Thank you.
Next witness.
The next witness should be not a stranger to this board or person of the insurance, Michael Toby, our professional planner.
Mr. Colby, if you would raise your right hand. You swear that the testimony you're about to give to this board shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
T-O-B-I-A.
Right, that's a short one tonight. Tobia, the applicant's planning
I
consultant.
believe he just took a stab at you, counsel.
I'm the used to it.
Would you please want to hear the witness?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, since the board is familiar with Mr. Tobio, can I just abbreviate and say that?
Well, if his license is still in effect, I think we're good.
Thank
Seen him many times.
Thank
Not
you.
for quite a while.
It's been about a year, I was thinking.
Yeah, I thought it was longer than that, but that's
Yeah.
okay. You could just be a regular here in the old days.
Yep, I'll come back more if you want, you know, so.
Okay.
So the license is still active. It's good to see everyone again. And I also worked on the Hanover job incidentally, as Patty did. Let's talk for a minute, just very briefly about
Any objections to qualifying Mr. Toby as an expert in planning?
Thank you. Okay, so this is in fact an upscale steakhouse. Upscale wines. I'm told the average entree in the building will be about $45 a plate. Okay, you heard no outdoor seating, and generally, right now I think we have Paramus, Cherry Hill, and 3 locations in New York City where the Capitol Grill is open and operating. Seasons will be next door. Seasons is a somewhat lower priced grill-style restaurant and wine bar. I don't want to make anyone too hungry or too thirsty. Over there, you're going to have about 50 bottles of wine by the glass, 100 by the bottle. Okay, it will be an integrated use, and Darden owns both buildings. We're before the board because we're in an SED 10 zone, Special Economic Development zone. The zone permits offices, it permits labs, it permits warehouses, and it permits fabrication and hotels. It does not permit restaurants, so as a consequence, we need a use variance to permit the restaurant. The other side of the property line, incidentally, in Hanover, has been rezoned to permit hotels, restaurants, retail. That's why you see the Wegmans over there. They're trying to modernize that zone to recognize the fact that offices just are not being built anymore, and we have chronic vacancies with the offices that we do have in the area. The McCallie complex right now has about a 23% vacancy with all the nice buildings you see over there. There are a lot of reasons why that's happening. The theme that you need to know is we've come to the conclusion that zoning as it now exists on this property has rendered the property useless from a land use perspective. McCallie, the applicant, and our representative Tom Golden here to my right have owned the piece since 1997. Prudential for perhaps 15 years before that. It's had the zoning in place the entire time. Needless to say, McCallie knows how to market buildings and advertise and list buildings for use and properties for development. There's never been any interest in the piece for any of the permitted uses in the SED 10 zone. One reason you can grant a use variance is for that simple reason. Zoning has rendered the property inutile unless some type of flexibility is provided. Okay. Beyond that, Route 10 is where people expect to find restaurants. And this board, I think, has worked on a couple of them through use variances, but if you drive the corridor, in addition to Seasons 52, which we just had approved a couple of weeks ago, you have Tabor Road Tavern, you have Grotto, you have, I always get it backwards, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse right next door to us, a Vietnamese restaurant, Zinburger, Smash Burger, and even Nico's, which is a sushi house heading down toward East Hanover on the eastbound side. It's a known corridor for restaurant use. His site is along that restaurant corridor. Neil, would you mind going to the aerial for a second? The Route 10 corridor, looking at A1 now, is shown left to right on the bottom of the exhibit. The subject property also meets what we call the particular suitability test. Okay, that means a use variance can be granted upon a showing that the site is particularly suited for the use. Okay, it doesn't have to be uniquely suited, just reasonably distinguished from other properties. Here, I want to pull your coattails to what's happening on Route 10. You see much of the McCallie Business Campus in the upper 2/3 of this exhibit, going all the way over to Route 10, to Route 287 in Hanover. Here you see the scraping that started for the Wegmans facility.
What is that?
And the entire campus has only 3 lots on the highway. The one now before you tonight is in fact on Route 10. Great visibility on Route 10. Everyone driving the highway will see the 2 restaurants if they're approved and built. People expect restaurants on Route 10, and ease of access for a restaurant is pretty good. Okay, restaurants are destination-oriented land uses. You won't go to the Capitol Grill every day. You won't be inconvenienced by the fact that we have to drive down Dryden Way, pull a U-E, come back down the service road into the site. One of the constraints to development as zoned is people, as Mr. Golden found out, did not want to go through that access arrangement for an office building or a hotel or some of the other permitted uses. It was the #1 complaint to the development of this site as zoned. But you will make that trip for a restaurant if you're going there once every 2 weeks, let's say. The other thing that happens, which is really important, is this becomes a fantastic accessory amenity, if you will, for all the folks who work in the campus. Because we'll be providing a left turn lane off of Dryden into the site, everyone in the campus can get to the site without getting out onto Route 10. So it's an easy drive for people there. We're finding that when folks do want to rent or lease new office space, they just don't want the office box. They want to know they have a gym, They want to know they might want daycare, and we have a daycare facility, as you know, up on Dryden. I think that's it right there. It's the smallest building in the whole campus. And they want to know they can go for a place to eat. And some of the new, more modern campuses also might have recreational amenities, jogging trails, and things like that. The restaurant becomes a perfect fit as a support use for all the office space in the complex, of which there's approximately 3.3 million square feet. When you read case law, as I have to do to understand how the courts have treated use variances, the Medici decision, now 32 years old, believe it or not, says another reason to grant a use variance might be that the circumstances and conditions in the community have changed since the zoning was put in place. Okay? And indeed they have in this particular instance. The office market in suburbia has tanked. Okay? It's tanked. There are whole buildings that are empty in this complex. Demand for this space is extremely limited. It's extremely challenging to market it and fill it. And this is something that's taken place kind of over a 20-25 year window. It's a slow death, not an immediate one, but it is a very important change circumstance that leads us on my side of the table to the conclusion that you're never going to see an office building on this property. Okay? And to flip it around the other way, if we want to see these other buildings continue to be occupied, restaurants support those uses, Wegmans support those uses. There's now a gym going in. Tom, is this?
No, right there.
Right here. 24-hour fitness is going in as another nice support use for the office space. We have hotels in the area, one shown thus, which is Hyatt House. We have Marriott shown thus to the south of A1. And now we have actually two hotels over to the west, where Ruth's Chris is. Okay, so there are changed circumstances in the area. What Hanover has done is try to fix their portion of this business campus by adding some other uses. And look at this not as only an office campus, as it was originally conjured up in the early 80s, but as more of a cohesive business community. So you can do all these other things and do one-stop shopping in a sense and still have a positive workplace in your office building. Let's talk bulk variances for a second, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay. And Neil, can we put up that A2, please? I'm going to speak to A2. You know, remember, I know you've heard this before, but the bulk standards here in the SED 10 zone were really designed to anticipate big box office buildings. Okay, many of the buildings here are over 100,000 feet. They're 3 stories. They were not put together to contemplate the 9,900 square foot restaurant that Patty just described. As a consequence, we have an expectation that setbacks, for instance, should be a lot more than we're providing on this site. I want to go through these with you very quickly, although I don't think the SED 10 standard should apply to something this small and quaint. Patty explained of 100 and, go backwards. Patty explained we have a front yard setback variance, which is actually from the Route 10 ramp. It's not even from one of the flanking roads. 150 feet is the requirement, and the proposed condition is 115 feet. Okay. We have a unique situation because we have a property line running right through the center of the site, and although this is going to be owned and managed and supervised by a single entity, this lot line creates a narrow side yard for us behind the Capitol Grill. Patty explained that 75 feet's the requirement. For the restaurant, 8.4 feet's the proposed condition. Now remember, 75 feet is what we want for a big old office building, not for something that's 1 story and no taller than most of our homes. Okay, So that is another one that I would submit is subsumed. Both of these variances are hardships onto no one, okay? The side yard setback off of the Capitol Grill faces the other restaurant on the site. The front yard setback only faces a highway ramp. In fact, the other side of Dryden Way in this particular area, speaking to the lower left of A2, is another jug handle. So there's no one that can possibly be impacted by either of the setback deficiencies. Building size also, the zone says, let's make them 15,000 feet, and yet the Capitol Grille business plan says all they need is 9,900 square feet. This is a restaurant, not an office building, okay? Parking setback, the site will be organized around a common access easement that will allow folks to come in off of Dryden, circulate both parking lots, and share the access arrangement. Because of that, we normally look for a planting strip at the edge of parking lots to decorate it with plant material and so on. But in this case, we have a continuous parking lot moving from one site to the other, from west to east. Providing the parking setback would just make no sense. It would create a physical barrier on a site that's designed to be open to have connectivity between the two restaurants. Let's talk signs. And maybe, Neil, can we go to A1 for a second, please? Is that the best one to show that, please?
Or no, you want these renderings?
I just want something. So, Patty described the monument sign off of Dryden. The monument sign, in simple terms, is a little taller, a little bigger, and a little closer to the street than the ordinance would permit. This sign has been carefully designed to reflect the fact that we have to advertise this entrance well beyond where the restaurant location will be. We moved it a bit closer to the street to improve its visibility. We have it up 1.7 feet higher than it should be by zoning to give it a little more visibility and to show a decorative stone base at the bottom of the sign. If we chopped off the stone base and dropped it down, not only would it not be as visible, it wouldn't be as good looking. Those details are on sheet 18 of your plans if you want to take a peek at them. All in all, I think the three variances associated with the monument are de minimis. What planners do at this point is wonder if we're creating sign clutter, sign pollution, anything like that. And what we know along this area, we have virtually no freestanding signs. You now have one out at Wegmans, just west of the Ridgedale Avenue intersection. You have a new one proposed for Seasons 52 that will serve both restaurants. And then you've got to come from that approval in Hanover 1,600 feet around the bend and up Dryden Way until you get to the proposed monument sign. And then if you think about Dryden Way, I think the next freestander is all the way up at the daycare facility. So there's a lot of elbow room between signs. There's no concern about sign clutter, and the variances are minor departures from the ordinance anyway.
Excuse me. Your proposed monument sign up Dryden Way is what size compared to the Wegman sign?
The Wegman sign on Route 10 is 250 square feet.
Okay.
And what's proposed is a total of 67.5 feet of copy.
Copy, that means the lettering.
That means that the background, so let me explain, I'm sorry. So the monument sign will have two signs on it. One will say the Capitol Grill.
Got it.
One will say Seasons 52, because we're trying to get people into both restaurants.
Is that on the Route 10 sign or on the Dryden Way sign?
Well, it's on both of them, actually.
Okay, thank
But
you.
the monument sign that you were talking about, when you add both signs together, and this is the whole back panel of each sign, not just the letters, you come up to with a total of 67.5 square feet, which is 1/4 of the Wegman sign.
Thank you, thank you.
Is that okay?
That's it, okay.
Can we go to A4, please? we'll talk wall signs for a minute. Let's go to A6 first, please. I'm sorry. Neil is our, not only our Vanna White for the night, he's our restaurant representative from Darden. So A6 will show our wall signs. And again, I want to point out, the ordinance contemplates a big office building with a single wall sign up on it that says ABC Corporation. We're proposing a restaurant. Restaurants have different needs. They do in fact have customers arriving who are first-time visitors. It's not like going to the same office building every day where some of us go to work and you know where the building is with your eyes shut. As a consequence, we propose a couple of things. One, where the ordinance permits one wall sign, we're going to ask you for 6. Okay? And we're going to go through them very quickly. The westerly facade, shown here on A6, is the entrance to the building. We wanted to articulate this entrance to the building with a sign right over the doorway. We call that a canopy sign. And 2 signs over our little gargoyle decorations that flank the door. Okay? We want conventional wall signs that we expect in this case will be visible from the ramp from Route 10 to Dryden. And now, Neil, can you go to A4 for a second, please?
Is that canopy sign backlit?
The wall sign's backlit, canopy
Wall
is
sign,
back.
yes, is the canopy sign.
Canopy backlit, Neil?
Yes.
Okay, and the plaques are not lit at all, right?
I'm sorry.
The plaques?
No.
Okay, so no lighting on those. And so now we're on, north facade, right? Yeah. So now we're on the north facade, same copy. This is like a pin-mounted system, okay? Meaning the sign has these tiny little attachments. The sign comes off of the wall to provide the shadow effect that you see illustrated here pretty nicely. And what we've done here is a 3-wall sign system that will allow you to see the building from Route 10, from Route 10 ramp, and from Dryden. And if we go to A5, you'll see we repeat that same There really was an A5. I touched it. And so this is probably the best of all the sign packages, so the sign illustrations. A5 now would show the southerly facade with the same sign, wall sign, pin-mounted, backlit. That would face Route 10. As you're heading westbound, you would see that sign. As you come around the ramp onto Dryden, you would see the westerly facade. From afar, we expect what you would see would be the wall sign, and not the canopy sign nor the little plaque signs. Okay, and then around the opposite side of this, on the north side, is what I just showed you in Exhibit A6. And the point is, restaurants have unique sign needs. If you look at this building, first of all, it's a really good-looking design. I can't look at this and again say, gee, these guys went crazy on signs. It just seems like a nice tempered package that has logic, given that we're essentially on a corner lot. Okay, I want to wrap up.
The other Capital, I apologize, Capital Grills that you mentioned in the state, Cherry Hill, Paramus, do they have a similar 6-sign package, or are they each unique?
Neil, I haven't been to the sites. We can ask Neil that question if you want when I'm finished.
Let's have somebody that has knowledge of it testify.
And is it okay if I'll finish first and then we can get Neil on up?
Oh, absolutely.
Sure. Okay.
Absolutely.
So I want to wrap up with a couple of other remarks. Variances such as this should promote some purposes of the municipal land use law. We promote goals A, C, D, I, and M. One of these goals is really interesting. It says, do your land use and zoning to make sure it does not conflict with the land use and zoning in other towns. And here, right next to us, is another restaurant approved and coordinated with this site proposed before you tonight. We think that coordinates land use between neighboring towns and not conflict. The other one, although I mentioned several, goal M speaks to the more efficient use of land. There can be nothing less efficient than a vacant parcel on the outskirts of the biggest business campus, probably in the county, okay? With Route 10 frontage, with Route 10 visibility, and it's sitting there doing nothing. We think this promotes more efficient use of land. We know it does, okay? And an efficient use of land that doesn't only benefit this restaurant operator, but everyone in the whole complex. On the negative criteria, I want to tell you, there are a lot of standards that are met by this applicant. We have an abundant amount of parking, for instance. Our setbacks are tremendous. Patty mentioned, because of the wetlands and the conservation easements we have on the property, we have a green belt around us that essentially isolates us and buffers any conceivable impact from our neighbors. What Patty did not mention on A2 is we also did a green belt along Route 10. So what you see out there now in spirit will remain. Your ordinance requires a 25-foot green belt along Route 10, and Patty, I think, is holding 40 feet in much of this area that will be landscaped. Some of the trees will be saved in that area, and you're still going to have that nice green look as you come around the ramp, as we all have for many years. There are no homes anywhere near us that could be impacted by this restaurant or the one in Hanover. This site represents a microscopic portion of the whole business campus, something like 2% of the land area in the campus. We cannot possibly conclude we're rebuilding the whole business campus or wrecking it or compromising the overall vision of the plan. The build-out, when expressed as a percentage of all the gross floor area on all the buildings in the campus, is also microscopic. Okay, so this is a tiny little tweak, and this is why we have the use variance tool, and the conclusion is this will not be a substantial impairment to the zoning ordinance. I'll wrap up in 1 minute by telling you the 2014 master plan said on page 8 we have vacancies in existing buildings throughout SED 10 that ordinance said it's going to be the master plan said it's going to be a constant challenge to upgrade, modernize, or adapt these existing buildings. Okay, we're doing this. We're responding to master plan directive. The master plan, page 9, says Parsippany has the second highest office vacancy rate in the whole state. And that's big news because everybody's having this problem. So Parsippany has the second worst condition in terms of occupancies of all the markets studied throughout the state. They estimate it in 2014 at about 21%. The plan, importantly, on page 51, again talks about the SED zone and says land use objectives should improve marketability and versatility in this real estate market. Okay, marketability and versatility, and create alternatives that are deemed appropriate with the township's land use policies. And I think what we're talking about here is versatile, it's creative, it is something different. I do think all these business parks have to reinvent themselves if we're going to move ahead with another 10 or 20 years of slackened demand for offices. I'm going to ask my client if I forgot anything. I don't think I have. I'll get a report card tomorrow morning from him. But I think that's it, Mr. Chairman, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Questions?
I have a quick question. This service road, as you call it, is that a private road or is that maintained by the town?
No, it's all private,
I'm
right?
sorry, it wasn't.
The access road will be all private. It's all private.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're responsible for snow removal or whatever?
Yes.
Okay.
That's that road to the well you're talking about? To the well house?
Yes.
And the road will be repaved, replaced during the,
Yes.
Yes.
because all the construction going on.
Who is,
Hold on,
hold on.
you gotta get
just
sworn
one
in if he's
second,
gonna,
please.
he's gonna testify, get you sworn in.
Are we introducing him as
This is
a,
Tom Golden, from Macallan.
Mr. Golden, you swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And-
Thomas Golden, Golden. I'm Vice President Development at Mac Kelly Realty Corp., which is the parent corporation of our Parsippany Hanover Realty Two.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Golden. Go ahead.
So we were talking about, as Chad said, the driveway coming in gets repaved. You can see it sort of here. We basically are redoing and providing more of a better access drive to get back to the well house. Right now, it's basically gravel. So we'll be able to pave that and repair that, as Chad said. Once we put all the utilities in here, it all gets ripped up. No
That-
sense in doing anything other than repaving it.
That utility house is used by Parsippany Water Department?
Yes, it's owned by, I think it's well number 19, well house number 19. It provides, there's one here, I think there's one up here on Sylvan. It's one of the main wells for the township. And as Patty said, we can't just take, the water's right here in the eastern Cape, but unfortunately, because of the way the system works, we have to take the water from a certain point away from the well house, what they call the first point of contact. It would have been nice if we could just make the connection right here and bring it right into the site, but we can't.
So I assume you don't want patrons going up that road, and I'm sure
There
Parsippany
will be a
doesn't, so
gate
how will it?
and
okay.
locked,
Thank
like
you.
there is now. Mr. Ruarka has that key at the water department.
Thank you. That was
I
one of
think
my
the
questions.
board also wanted to hear from our Darden representative, Neil Terwilliger.
I still have some questions.
If
Yeah, I
anybody has
got-
any
I
questions
have
of
more
Mr.
questions.
Tobia or Mr. Golden?
Just one quick one on
Alright.
the location. So we're right along the township line, you're saying 7 feet. But we have parking places, so just looking at the map, my question, if that's a problem, why can't that move over off of that property line a little bit? I'm just saying, it looks like you got a whole lot of room to move it up to the left there a little bit. Just asking a question.
Are you saying move the building or
Yeah.
the parking lot or?
Or if the issue is the property, the building's gonna be built within 7 feet of
Oh, I
the
see.
township line, okay?
So needless to say, a lot of work went into this
Yes,
before we got
I'm sure
here.
it has.
You know that,
What are we gonna accomplish by doing that?
The objective by placing it where
Remove a
it
variance,
is,
yeah.
as east as it could be, is visibility off of the highway. As you move this building further to the northwest, you start to compromise this sight line from the highway to the building. That's why it ended up there.
Okay, that's a good answer.
The fire chief recommended emergency access road, which I didn't hear anyone talk about.
I will address that. What we have done, we had approached NJDOT Region North, okay, which is the local operation, asking them if we could provide an emergency driveway only. From Route 287, from Ridgedale, all the way up to just before the driveway is what's called a no access line. When DOT did the Dryden underpass and the changes at Ridgedale and this all back in the 80s, they created a no access line, meaning that there would be no driveways accessing Route 10 in this stretch, okay? What we approached them with was a request to do an emergency driveway. And the idea would be that we would do it somewhere in here where the grades aren't too steep and be able to provide the ability for OEM, fire, whatever, to be able to come in and access, circulate the site for any of those emergencies.
Council, so that the record can reflect what here is, we have Mr. Golden provide a little more
A2.
specificity. A2, and then you're pointing to a certain portion of A2.
Pointing to the main drive
in front of the Seasons 52, in the relative location as you come. If you created a access point off of the ramp, up the little bit of the berm, and in that first drive out in front of Seasons 52, that would then allow them to circulate along the north of the site, come back down the main drive in front of Capitol, and create a loop that they could access.
So that you can appreciate, I'm not being difficult, we have a court reporter who's taking a written transcript, and we want to make sure that here is defined on the record.
The response we got from them was no. Our response is that, as we talked about in Hanover, is that upon their approval, they agreed that they would support our request to go back. And again, we would hopefully make the same request of this board, that with the two townships' support of the boards and their governing bodies and or their emergency personnel, we believe we would go back to them and request that, not just for our purposes, but for your purposes. And that we believe that we would have a better chance of success. We would make that good faith effort. We just, since we can't guarantee we would get that, we in Hanover offered that we would make the good faith effort, but it wouldn't be a condition of approval to get it, because if we can't get it, we didn't want that to affect the approval. So upon this board's approval, if I'm to be optimistic, we would do the same thing here, is ask for support, go back to DOT and ask them, because the state access code doesn't, even though this is a no access line, as I described from Ridgedale on up to Dryden, it doesn't preclude an emergency driveway. Doesn't say that you can't have that. It's silent, which means for us, and our discussions is that means it's possible. If it's possible, we'll request it. That's the best I can address it.
The access road that we have coming in right now, that's a normal size road? It's not
30
like,
foot wide.
So it's not like it's a 10-foot wide road that could be blocked. Chances that the fire equipment would not have access to that road would be remote?
I would agree, probably less than remote, but again, we're thinking it would be good for us as landlord, them as tenant, and the townships in general to have it. So why not go for it? I just can't guarantee it. Hope that answers your question.
It does. There's one more question I have that I didn't hear addressed. It was in Mr. Chadwick's report, and in full disclosure, I'm not sure why he asked for clarification on this, but I'm going to follow up on it. The report said to get clarification on the order of which property was going to be built first. So I don't know what I'm asking, but I'm asking it.
I'll let Tom handle that.
Okay.
The intention is to build them together, okay? So that, for example, we would start grading and filling, cutting and filling the site and build them simultaneously, create a pad for Capitol Grove, create a pad for Seasons 50, we'll build them simultaneously and open them relatively simultaneously. If in fact if the Seasons 52 is ahead of the other, obviously we would need to have sufficient access, utilities, lighting, security, etc., to allow that. But given the way construction is, I can't guarantee, I would not want to say they have to open the exact same day, as long as this board is comfortable that there's sufficient services here to allow this to open, and that would serve this, that would be our preference. The idea is to build them both and occupy them both at the same time.
So I guess the question is then, if Seasons 52 is ready to go first, how would we manage the construction zone that patrons have to drive through?
This would have to be, the Parsippany side would have to be sufficiently developed.
Okay.
Curbing, lighting, sidewalk, fencing, whatever, subject to, typically what we do is we work through the engineering office that they would determine that in fact it's sufficiently, and the fire department, that it's sufficiently safe. Base coat is in, top coat is in, lighting lights, so that we would, just like here, we can create for you what we believe to be the minimum requirements of what would have to be done in here to allow people to safely come through and get to the site. If, for example, Seasons is opened a month or two or whatever before. That's the way we would propose to do it in Hanover. That's what we propose to do here in Parsippany.
Good.
Mr. Berkowitz?
Getting back to the signs,
Yes, sir.
how many signs are on the 52 restaurant?
I'll answer that.
You got it?
Oh, okay.
Seasons 52. There is one sign on this elevation, which I'm gonna call, what should I call that, east?
East.
One sign here on the east, one sign here on the south, one sign here on the west, and the pylon sign. There was no need for a sign in the rear. The only real difference here with Capital Grill is we're showing 1, 2, 1, and the 2 small plaques at the front entrance, which created that entryway. They're technically signs, but they're basically plaques that get affixed to, as Michael said, the gargoyles.
And the purpose?
To create a sense of entry, to create a sense of drama, to create an aesthetic entrance. These are not large signs. The signs on the building are, I think, 12 feet long by 1 foot high, and they're lettering. So it is a very sleek and aesthetic look. It's not a light box. It, you know, if you understand, it's not something that's very grandiose. It's very sleek. This is a very sleek and contemporary building. And this is very sleek and contemporary signage, which we believe is necessary, like Michael said, because we believe this is sort of a corner lot, that you want that visibility. We don't believe that it's anything but fit.
Mr. Bolden, could you put up A4 for a second, please? I have a question. It looks as though on our smaller table, or what was it called, placemat size, the left gargoyle has another sign attached to it
Okay,
on
that's
its
all,
left.
we picked it up. That is an error in the drafting, so it's actually on, the ones that are on the side.
No, A4, you can see it on ours.
Right, you can see that. Those were.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Those were an error by the draftsman. They only are on the ones when you come and face the building, which is A6. So here and here, not on the sides of those.
I'm sorry, the sequence then is different than the clip that we have here.
Correct.
Let's get that straight.
So placemat order is not 8, 4, 5, 6, it's there,
It's in reverse.
Okay.
So let's, because I did not catch that, A1 is the Google map, A2 is the schematic, 3 is
The overall utility plan.
right? Now, we're looking at, which one is that one in front of us? Six? Not,
Oh,
that
so
one?
this is A6, yes.
West-
Six.
West relief facade.
Even though it's the 4th sheet. You did this on purpose, Councilman. It's
I'm
really-
pointing at Patty.
Okay, all right, the one with the red vehicle,
Is A5.
okay, that matches up, and then the other by default is A4.
That is A4.
Okay. So I apologize, I was referring originally, as Mr. Toby pointed out, to A6. So that sign is not, in fact, gonna be there.
Those 2 little plaques, as you face the front door, those are 2 of the 6 that we talked about. The ones that are represented on the renderings, on the side of those, or a drafting error.
I still don't understand why you need the sign over the door, if you have the sign on the side of the building, and the sign coming into the driveway. It just seems like too many signs.
Put up A6 for a second, please, Tom. So what we're trying to do here, Mr. Berkowitz, and this is not uncommon, was to, as Tom said, this is the entry now, and this being the left side of A6. This is the archway over the door. And from folks coming in the parking lot without this canopy sign here, then are directed to a wall sign further to the right of A6.
But there's no doors.
But there are no doors, okay? So we're just trying to direct people, and there's a lot happening here with what we call a sense of arrival. The columns articulate that doorway, the canopy above the doorway, and even the tower that rises above the canopy all says you got to the right spot, okay? This is a building that people won't be going there every day, and we want it identified with the canopy sign. This is a skinny sign. It has no, like Tom said, it's not a cabinet sign. It has no real massing to it, and it's see-through. Okay, and we think it's reasonable. I also learned, incidentally, this same package is what we find in Parsippany and in Cherry Hill, the two other suburban locations, as to plaques, canopies, and wall signs. The only difference is in Paramus, there are only 2 wall signs because the road network just doesn't require the third. Cherry Hill is exactly the same package as you're seeing here in terms of sign size and fonts and everything else.
You have that on the authority of the restaurateur.
Yes, and that is Neil Terwilliger.
Well, Mr. Terwilliger, I apologize, still be testifying.
If the board has any further questions that Mr. Terwilliger can answer, he's available. But I believe the questions were answered.
I think the only thing we have a question was is a traffic report.
John said he would bring that up.
I think I covered it, Mr. Chairman. I am kind of interested to see Mr. Tom Balakian cross-examine Mr. Terwilliger.
I'm not crossing it.
See how that works out, but.
Crosses on the witness, Mr. Tobin. That I'd like to see as well.
Are there any members of the public that have any questions? Are there any members of the public that have any questions of either of the witnesses that have testified in the last few minutes? I hear none and see none.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if,
Yeah.
I know we talked about who was going to be presenting tonight. Can we hear from the traffic engineer?
We certainly can, if you have specific questions, or you
Uh,
wanted to give a general overview of the.
Well, there was a recent memo from our office that had some disagreements.
Address the memo.
Disagreements with the left-hand turn out of the access road, and we have subsequently had a conference call this afternoon.
I mean, that's why we have, so I'm calling up Andy Jafala. He's a professional engineer from Dynamic Traffic, and he was responsible for the traffic study, and we're going to swear him in and qualify.
Andy, A-N-D-Y, last name, please.
J-A-F as in Frank, O-L-L-A.
Mr. Jafala, please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give this board shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Would you want hear him, please?
Mr. Jafala, can you please give the board the benefit of your educational background, your license, your testifying experience, and confirm that your license remains in good standing?
Sure. I have a Bachelor's of Science from Rutgers University. I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I am also a certified professional traffic operations engineer. That's a certification put out by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. I am a principal at Dynamic Traffic. I've been participating in the traffic engineering field throughout New Jersey since I started my career. I've testified in front of numerous land use boards throughout New Jersey. The closest to Parsippany being Hanover a few years back in regards to the jug handle that was recently constructed.
Counsel, you're offering him as a traffic engineer?
Traffic engineer.
Any objections from the board members to qualifying Mr. Jafala?
No.
Counsel, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jafala, you heard the testimony from Mr. Golden and Mr. Ruskin. So they gave an overview of the site circulation and the typical type, at least how the site works. Mr. Holloway has asked that you really focus in on, let's talk about the Dryden accessway, and given the recent conversations and understandings of how that will work. Can you give the board the benefit of your thinking on how that design is going to be implemented?
And we're talking about a March 12, 2019 memo to Mr. Holloway from Mr. Lochers.
That's correct. That's correct.
So what we're going to mark is Exhibit A7. Can you describe A7 for the record, Andy?
Sure. So Exhibit A7 is a colorized version of our signing and striping plan. This is a plan taking out of the roadway construction plans that we submitted to the board. And what this shows is the existing access road that is will provide the access for the site on the bottom side of this drawing. Just to orient you here, north in this case is to the right of the sheet that you're looking at, right here. Here's the access road. This access road will ultimately provide access into the two restaurants. And what we're seeing in the center here is the proposed left turn lane that will cut into the existing median on Dryden Way. So we propose to essentially cut into that median, provide that left turn in access, and also provide a means for someone exiting the site to make a left out or a left out to Dryden Way southbound, which ultimately brings you to Route 10, or to make a right out to bring you into the campus area. Now, we had, there was a memo issued yesterday, March 12, 2019. It was from GPI, and it was forwarded to us by Mr. Holloway. And in that memo, it was recommended there were some concerns raised about the proximity of this driveway to the Route 10 ramps, the off-ramps particularly, the eastbound and westbound off-ramps that merge in the area to the left of the access road or to the south as we're looking at this plan. So we had a conference call today with Mr. Holloway and members of GPI to discuss that memo, to discuss their concerns, and to really explain why we designed it this way, why we think it works well, and why left turns out can be provided. And we came up with some solutions that we think are going to improve the sight lines to this driveway so that lefts out can be accommodated. One of the key aspects, and this is something that I identified before this memo come out, and I recommended to Mr. Golden, he had agreed to do so, is to clear out some of the shrubs and the overhanging branches that are within the right-of-way as you come off the ramp. So, I'm going to point out off the sheet, but Route 10, it comes around the curve, and as you're looking for that driveway or for the sign, it's right in here, as you come eastbound and you make your way around the ramp, westbound, as you make your way around the ramp, we have the driveway right here. So you are coming around that curve, and there is the merge occurring between the westbound and the eastbound lanes. So what we want to do is maximize the sight distance, and we can do that by clearing out shrubs and overhanging branches fully within the right-of-way. And by doing so, we provide what is called the intersection sight distance, so that there's full visibility between motorists that are coming off of Route 10 and someone wishing to exit that driveway. And this is something that exceeds the minimum standard, which is a stopping sight distance. The stopping sight distance is the minimum distance you need to safely come to a stop in wet pavement conditions. The intersection sight distance is really something that's out there. It's something that allows, it's a standard that is there so that if you're turning out of the driveway, you can make the left turn out or the right into Dryden Way with minimal impact to vehicles that are already on Dryden Way, so meaning that they really wouldn't need to slow down to allow that turn movement to occur. So this is something that we discussed with the engineer by clearing out that shrubbery. And the one other item that we identified and looking through some of the photographs, it does appear some of the signing that would be appropriate for a merge condition coming off the ramp has been knocked down. I actually went through Google Street View, and it looks like it's been knocked down since at least 2013. You can still see the little post sticking out of the ground, and it's still the case today. And we've agreed to reinstall that sign so that you have the proper signing for the merge condition that exists. So I think, with those two items, it's my understanding that the board engineer is agreeable to allowing the left turn. I'll let him speak for himself.
Yes, that's true, Mr. Chairman. The objections we had initially in the memo have been withdrawn. Based on our conversation, we're happy with the proposed development.
What is the approximate distance in feet from the time you leave Route 10 till you hit that driveway?
Several hundred feet.
Several
I'd guess, I'd be approximating, but over 1,000 feet. Give a scale.
So someone exiting at, say, 45 miles an hour would have sufficient time to see that driveway?
Mr. Chairman, where would you like him to measure from?
Well, from the time I leave Route 10,
Okay.
approximately, I'm not,
Yeah, it's over 1,000 feet.
so a normal driver would have ample time to see the driveway and potential cars and.
Absolutely.
And the cars coming out would have
Absolutely, and
ample
that's
time to see a car coming around that curve.
Absolutely, and that's what goes in the intersection sight distance. That accounts for the speed of users coming around the ramp, and it accounts for, there is a vertical curve as you come over that ramp. It accounts for that ground condition. So we have ample sight distance. It actually exceeds the the required site
What's the
distance.
speed limit on that?
So Dryden is 35 miles per hour posted.
So that means people will be doing 60.
Well, you know, I thought so, but you know, I stood out there and they're not.
Hey, look, I know New Jersey drivers.
Andy, the applicant, we previously stipulated that we were going to satisfy all the comments raised in Mr. Holloway's January memo. Will you further stipulate that the final design that's going to be implemented will satisfy Mr. Holloway's concerns and the town's traffic engineers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with the exception of the left turn restriction, I think we agree we can provide, we can satisfy any of the engineer's concerns.
Are all the other ingress egress, I think there's only 2 or 3, both right turn, left turn, like for the daycare center and across the daycare center, are those the only 2, except obviously the traffic light, where someone can get onto Dryden?
You want me to, I'll address it. Again, we're looking at A1. Other than the driveway on the north side to the site itself, you have driveways up at the daycare center, which is, you can come in at the southerly entrance and go out at the northerly entrance, and that you can go.
Right or left?
Yes.
Okay.
There are no other driveways on the east side of Dryden. On the west side of Dryden, you have the driveway for 9 Sylvan, and you come down to Campus Drive. There's also a drive, it's hard to see, but there's also a drive to get into 7 Sylvan A Campus. Then Campus Drive. There are no driveways on the stretch from Campus Drive down to Route 10 on the west side. So very limited.
Unless the board has, would like Mr. Holland to go over other traffic issues, I have no further
I
questions.
don't believe so. Any members of the public have any questions of this witness? I hear none and see none.
That concludes my case.
Do you want to see if there's any members of the public that are objectors before you sub?
Sure.
Any members of the public have any, would like to speak in opposition to this application, in support of this application? I hear none and see none.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the board knows, I mean, this has been a carefully thought out plan. It's been in the works for several years. A lot of design, a lot of careful attention went into the design. It's gonna finally bring use to a parcel of the business campus that hasn't been used, unfortunately. We believe that the addition of 2 really quality restaurants like this will really help invigorate the business campus, kind of make the whole package of, you know, live, work, play, dine, study, workout, that whole thing. I believe it's a great positive to the town. Again, we are seeking use variance, but the use variance, as Mr. Sylvia amply explained, has been satisfied, all the criteria have been satisfied. Again, this zone was intended for large office buildings, and a large office building has never been even planned for the site because there's no demand for it. Again, there is demand for restaurants, it's complementary to the site. We believe it's gonna be a huge hit, otherwise we wouldn't be doing it. So we would ask this board, if the board agrees with what it heard this evening, to join with what Hanover did and approve the Parsippany section of this restaurant island and grant the few reliefs we're asking for in terms of preliminary and final major site, use variance, bulk variances, as well as the soil moving permit. We just recommend that the council grant that for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a reason to go into conference?
Council, what would be the timeline, all things being equal, for this development?
Tom, the question was, if subject to this board approving it, how quickly do you think you can get in the ground?
Well, not how quickly, we're not racing you to the finish line. What's your timetable?
It is our anticipation that we will begin immediately upon receipt of approvals. So we have our DEP approval, we have our Hanover site plan approval. Again, if we can assume for the moment we have our Parsippany approval, we have to get our treatment works approval, soil erosion approval, and possibly a water allocation permit from Parsippany, though we believe we may be exempt from that. The intention would be, upon receiving those approvals, to start work immediately so that this can open in 2020.
And then you had mentioned that Hanover did not make, as a condition of their approval, resolving the issue with regard to the emergency access from Route 10, correct?
Their condition, what they said was we would we agreed that we would make a good faith effort to secure approval for emergency driveway, but it was not a condition of approval that we secure that driveway.
Commissioner, did you want to make that a condition of this approval, or were you looking to simply hear from the applicant on that?
I think it's reasonable to, similar to Hanover, make a condition the good faith effort.
Okay.
I have no objection to that.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Here, maybe, if I can, I have a draft copy of the Hanover resolution, and in condition number 2, can I just read it in the record? So
Sure.
The applicant shall comply with and satisfy paragraphs 1 through 12 contained in the Township Engineers Review Memorandum dated February 26, 2019, with reference to paragraph 23 of the Bureau of Fire Prevention Report dated January 25, 2019, referenced in paragraph 1.h of the Township Engineers Review Memo, close paren. The applicant shall make a good faith effort to obtain a secondary access road for emergency vehicle use only. The location of the road shall be accessible from westbound Route 10 and lead into the property. The township will assist the applicant in obtaining NJDOT approval for the secondary access. And the final sentence of that condition, in the event the secondary access is not approved by NJDOT, the applicant shall be relieved of the requirement to construct the secondary access.
So the Land Use Board in Hanover was able to bind the township to assisting your client in making that good faith application?
That's how Hanover rolls.
No kidding. I don't know if we quite have that power, but certainly that should be something.
We ain't even gonna try and do that one. Are you kidding? Not in
We
this
should
town.
discuss that, Chairman,
Yeah.
in any event.
That's what they say, it doesn't mean.
Got other
something
fights,
can happen.
Huh?
battles, we got other battles to fight.
Yeah, we got other battles to fight.
So that we should probably chat on that.
Yeah.
I mean, we can put it in the resolution that we will do everything we can to help the applicant proceed, but I don't see any way that we could bind the council or anybody.
We can't bind the municipality. I'm surprised that that's what Hanover's Land Use Board did. That seems to run counter to their
One
form of
difference is,
government as well.
On the planning board in Hanover, there's the councilman and the mayor,
Right.
so they're already
Two or
running
five,
the
that's
show.
exactly right.
They got 2 votes. Okay.
Yeah, 2 votes.
Well, we, as the chairman points out, we don't have the ability to do that, but certainly the voice of the board will be made known, or the opinion of the board will be made known to the governing body, and they'll take it up in due course.
Like, for example, if we asked the township committee to adopt a resolution endorsing it, we would independently ask the township for such a resolution.
That may be the best course,
I
is
like
for
that.
you to visit them independent of this board.
I like that.
But certainly reference this discussion, and by that time, you'll have the approval in hand. Yeah.
Thanks.
So do I have a volunteer to frame a resolution then? No? How about we authorize the attorney to draft a resolution incorporating all of the provisions? Is that acceptable to you, Council?
Very acceptable. Thank you.
It's a motion to draft.
Yeah.
So moved, Berkowitz.
Secondary.
Thank you, Mr. Reddy. Is there any discussion on that motion? Nora, call the roll.
Mr. Berkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Jaskowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Kaplan?
Yes.
Mr. Prasad?
Yes.
Mr. Reddy?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Willens?
Yes.
Chairman Ira Kane.
Yes.
Thank you very
I would just like to make a comment that I think this is a very good application. I mean, we've been accused of granting too many variances. I think in this case, it's a win-win for the town, for the communities, and the public. I think it offers them something new.
We do appreciate that, Chairman. Thank you. We look forward to moving on.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Good luck. Nora, is there anything else we need to do?
That is it.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Good.
All right, Nora, stay out of trouble.
Yeah, come on.